Hey there, guys. Welcome to the Boob Business Podcast with me, the original Milk Diva. I am a former labor and delivery nurse and a board-certified lactation consultant in Austin, Texas. I'm the owner of Milk Diva Lactation. And I'm also the author of a best-selling book called Milked: Finding Your Flow and the First Few Weeks of Breastfeeding. This podcast is all about pulling back the curtain of all the things in breastfeeding and birthland. And so we're just going to talk about insider things people don't usually talk about in an unscripted fashion. So let's just jump right in, okay? Hey there, guys. I know it's been a little while since you've heard from me. Today's episode is going to be all about my trip to Africa and the work that I did there. And some of you who supported that trip, I wanted to share with you the impact that your donations made. But before I get into the juicy bits, I did want to first just pause and thank my mom. She stayed in my house with my kids and my dogs for 3 weeks. And that is a big sacrifice. And so I'm really grateful that she's healthy and well enough to be able to do that, and young enough and willing to do that. And then the second thank you I want to say, because I was completely offline for basically 3 weeks, is I really want to thank the lactation consultants and the chiropractor here at Milk Diva, Katie, Isabel, Lindsay, Lisa, and Dr. Steph, and Jen, my virtual assistant. You guys did an amazing job handling everything while I was gone. Like, you guys kept everything moving. There was no way I was going to be able to be on the other side of the world, 8 hours difference in time. And it was really, really nice to be able to focus just on what I was doing on this trip and not have to multitask and do a lot of other things. So the peace that I had knowing that my family was taken care of by my mom and that the business was taken care of by the people who work here who are amazing is just a gift that I cannot tell you how much it means to me and to the people of Malawi that I was able to be with. So let's jump into why Malawi, what I was doing there, the work that I did. So yeah, I'll start off with kind of sharing. I'm trying to make this be a nice, smooth, fluid episode, but there's so many pieces to it. So let's just kind of start off with, why Malawi? So I went to volunteer with an organization that's founded by a nurse midwife. Her name is Joanne, and the organization is Joyful Motherhood. In Malawi, 6% of children die before the age of 5 years old. Of these of this 6%, 68% of those babies die within the first year, and 40% die within the first month. So basically, of those 6% of the babies who are dying before 5 years old, 40% of them die in the first month, and the remaining who's left over are going to die within the first year. And so this organization targets high-risk infants age 0 through 1 so they can have a significant impact on child survival. So over 95% of the babies enrolled in their program survive. And so one might ask, what is a high-risk infant? And so a high-risk infant, what I learned, because I went on a tour of the NIC unit and of the labor and delivery unit and of the antepartum unit, and I'm going to show you everything. I have some videos. A high-risk infant is one that was born with low APGAR scores. So when I say low, I mean 0, 1, 2, 3. So they call that asphyxia. Baby who's a twin or a triplet, they have a lot of twins and triplets. A lot of that is because the food subsidy that they eat is very high in estrogen and a soy-based product. So twins and triplets that are born early and they're low birth weight, or preterm babies, right? Preterm babies, multiple babies, and babies with low APGAR scores. In general, that might be something that is considered a high-risk infant. The other most important group here, high-risk infant, which is what primarily Joyful Motherhood works with, are infants whose mothers have died. So we talk about the statistics being 6% of children die before the age of 5. How about we talk about maternal health statistics of Malawi? So just to give you an example, we know that in the U.S., we have a pretty high maternal mortality rate for being an industrialized country. So in general, about 17 to 18 you'll have 17 to 18 maternal deaths per 1,000 live births in the US. That's very high. In Malawi, you will have anywhere from 225 to 381 deaths, maternal deaths per 100,000 live births. So basically, 300 maternal deaths compared to 15 or so maternal deaths in the US. Huge, 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 huge problem. It is staggering. I mean, there's a lot of systemic, geographic, and socioeconomic inequalities and limitations. Like resources are very limited there. It's not because the Malawian people want to improve their outcomes, but they're a very, very poor country with very, very, very limited resources. And so the leading causes of mortality include hemorrhage, hypertensive disorders like preeclampsia, and barriers to receiving timely emergency care, because a lot of people live very, very far away from the nearest hospital. They're living in villages far away. And people just can't get in an Uber and go to the hospital 2 hours away. Like for them to get transport there, people have bicycles. People don't have cars. Like that's not a standard in the villages. And if you have a bicycle, you're considered, pretty well off. So that's just something to consider. Of course, there's lots of, severe funding shortfalls for reproductive and newborn health. And so, yeah, there is a huge disparity in, sub-Saharan African countries like this. And so that's why I wanted to go there. So that's kind of like a hard, glum start to things. But I did want you to know, why Malawi and have, an actual idea as to, what the outcomes for babies and moms are there compared to what we are seeing here in the U.S. I do want to say that in Malawi, they have made amazing progress. I mean, the fact that they have isolettes and they have a actual nursery / NICU, they just didn't have that before. So when I went, even though from my U.S. lens, it looks like, oh my gosh, this is really dire. The fact that they are treating and taking care of so many births and taking care of so many women, have a hospital for them, is amazing. They are able to take care of so many babies in their nursery / NICU is amazing because they didn't have that before. And so here's some information and some statistics I learned while I was there. So in the last few years, the leading cause of infant death or neonatal mortality in Malawi is premature deliveries. And so since 2021, they had 28 neonatal deaths per 1,000 live births. And now in 2024, the latest data was 2024, they went from 28 down to 24 neonatal deaths per 100,000. So the things that they are doing are definitely moving the needle in the right direction. So I just want to share a little bit more about the things that are driving factors in this part of the world, which we may not be familiar with. But the drivers of crisis are climate change. So extreme harsh weather, floods, and droughts really disrupt people's ability to get care, to make an income, to pay for certain, things about their care. And it also increases preterm deliveries. So climate change, there is a direct link to increasing preterm deliveries, as you'll see here on the right part of this chart. And then underneath there, systemic care gaps. I'm going to zoom in here so we can look at this together. What they've been able to do is improve access. So instead of people having their babies in the villages and they're very far away from a hospital with advanced medical care, they have been able to get 90% of these pregnant women to deliver in a facility. One of the challenges they're working on is poor quality of care or substandard care for small and sick newborns. That is a main issue. And then nutritional requirements for small and sick newborns are high, but they're not addressed. And that's one of the main things that I did when I was there, is work on these small and sick newborns, because there is really no training on hand expression. There is no training on, did you know that if we don't hand express and your baby's not old enough to pull the milk out, your milk will dry up and then we'll have a, starvation issue when your baby is 3 or 4 months old. So it was like, how can we maximize milk supply for these babies that are too little and weak to actually latch directly and transfer milk? How can we teach the community the importance of maintaining and how to maintain a full milk supply, and understanding that this baby at the breast who's just sleeping is doing just that, just sleeping, not actually getting milk. And so cup feeding, spoon feeding, and hand expression are going to be vital until this baby has the strength to do it on their own. So it was quite a feat making it through customs with all these little infant feeding cups and these little bottles to prepare milk. Not when I say bottles, there was no like nipples attached to them, but it was like a container that we can put your express milk in. So that is a little bit about kind of what I'm walking into. I did just want to share that the people of Malawi have made, amazing strides into improving outcomes. The fact that 90% of births are now facility-based instead of, because they were having a lot of deaths in the villages because if something went wrong, they were way too far to get care when it comes to like blood transfusions or resuscitation for a baby or for a mom. So this is definitely a step in the right direction. It just needs a little bit more support throughout the years. I need people to stay and be invested. And that's what I love so much about Joyful Motherhood. They live there. They stay there. That is their permanent home. They're not coming back and forth. They are Malawians taking care of Malawian people in their community, as it should be. So what I'll first say is when I first got to Malawi, it took me 38 hours to get there. We had a long layover in Germany. We were exhausted. I slept till the next day, like when I got there till like 12 noon. Such a blessing. We were at Joanne's house. She's the founder of the nonprofit. She's such a gracious host, her and her family and her kids and her husband. They cooked for us. They took care of us. Like when I did get sick while I was there. And she was just a gracious, hospitable, humble host and a fantastic, I don't know what you call it when it's a nonprofit, like a CEO or the person who runs her nonprofit. The people who work for her have been working for her 10, 15 years. They are really dedicated to this work. So I'm going to first start off showing you a couple of pictures of the team at Joyful Motherhood. So I'll insert a couple pictures here so you can see the ladies I'm working with. These are some of the midwives. What I'm going to share with you, I want you to imagine if you've watched that show called The Midwife. It's a show about these nuns and they're midwives and they're in the UK and they're in the like early 1930s, 20s, I don't know. And they're going to people's homes, but they're in a city and they're going to the people's homes, helping them through their prenatal period and their laborers in a city in England somewhere. This is similar to that, except we're in Africa and it's not a city. People are spread out. So they are seeing people in a clinic in the capital, but then they are going and doing home visits. I shouldn't say home visits. They're doing like community visits. So we might, if you want to, I'll put a picture here of, this is a sugar processing plant that we stopped at to visit 3 guardians. When I say guardians, they're actual like either the aunt or the sister or the grandma of the deceased mom who's basically taken over care of the baby. Otherwise, the baby would be an orphan. And so they're coming and they're maybe sometimes walking or riding a bike or getting a ride from 10 miles away to meet at this spot once a month where the midwives come and I'll show you some pictures here of them weighing the babies, measuring their length, measuring their FOC, their head circumference, measuring their arm, because that's like a way that they have with the World Health Organization to see if they're underweight or if they're on target. And so they're doing these visits every day or at least 4 days a week. They're going out and they're visiting people all over the country. And many of the times, of course, they can't go to their individual homes, but they will find a meeting place and have 2, 3, 4 guardians and the babies meet them there once per month. And they'll sit and they'll wait until whenever they come. And so that's just a little bit of the midwives that are working there and what they do in this organization at Joyful Motherhood. I'm going to get a little bit more into that here in a second, but they are taking care of those high-risk babies who have no way to get food and they will die otherwise. And so people cannot afford to go to the store and buy formula. It is very expensive, but also it's very common for people to make less than $200 a month there. And formula that's your whole salary right there if you're just buying formula, especially if that's not your child, that's your grandchild or your nephew or something, and you have your own kids you need to take care of. So Joyful Motherhood does the best they can with filling that gap and providing infant formula and proper instructions how to make that formula safe for consumption. They give them thermoses to keep the water, boiling or at hot temperature so that they can prepare the formula properly. They teach them how to mix and measure properly. They give them the feeding cups. That's one of the things that you guys helped raise money for, is these infant feeding cups. I also want to give a special thanks to Alice from Austin City Lactation. She helped me be able to get better pricing on some of the products that I brought down there to help with this infant feeding project. So I'm going to show a little picture of this mom, or it's not a mom, I keep saying mom, the guardian, who is feeding a baby in one of the feeding cups that we provided for them. Yeah, so the midwives teach them how to make, mix, measure, and safely give the formula. One of the things that I had to do while I was there was really explain and do some education on how much formula is required for a baby based on their age and their weight, because what I would see is we would see like 20 babies in a day and maybe 15 of them look great, but then there would be like a small handful that looked so tiny. Like I saw I think 7-month-old that looked like was 3 months old. And in that case, the midwives explained, well, in this case, this guardian does not have any extra money, so she can only live off of the formula we give her. And if it wasn't enough, she has no way to subsidize it. And so thankfully, through really good sourcing, Joyful Motherhood has been able to get Hey mama, if you're pregnant or just had your baby, I wrote something just for you. It's called Milked, Finding Your Flow in the First Weeks of Breastfeeding. And it's basically the guide I wish someone had handed me before I became a mom. This isn't your average breastfeeding manual. It's real, it's relatable, and it's packed with insider secrets that I've learned from helping thousands of families as a labor and delivery nurse and an IBCLC. You'll get the truth about what actually happens in those first few weeks, the stuff no one talks about, and how to feed your baby with more confidence, less stress, and a whole lot more grace. So you can grab your copy now at Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, or Apple Books. You can even get it for, reading it on your Kindle. So just search Milked, which is spelled MILK''D, or head to milkedbook.com, MILKDBOOK.com. Because a more confident start means a calmer you, and that's exactly what your baby deserves. Lower cost formula from a company in France. And so now they're able to give more formula so that the babies, before their goal was just like, can the babies live? Can we just save the babies so that they don't die? And now the goal, which is so amazing, is these babies thrive? Can we make sure we prevent stunted growth and malnourishment? Not just death, but can we have them thrive? So they've transitioned a little bit more to being able to provide optimal amounts of infant formula, which is amazing. But anything you can do to support this organization would be amazing. There is not much funding for organizations that are giving out formula because formula has been demonized. And I get it. But in this case, the mom has died. So we got to feed the baby formula. Like, wet nursing is not a thing. People are malnourished or barely making enough milk for their own babies. They're not it's just not something that's as easily accessible as it may sound on paper. Formula is what saves these babies' lives. While we're on this topic of formula, I did go to the grocery store and I wanted you to see what the grocery store should look like if your country that you live in is actually having any integrity with the wellness and well-being of babies, and they're following the World Health Organization code of breast milk substitutes. So this is a picture of what the grocery store aisle looks like in formula. It should always look like this. There is no special marketing, no pictures of babies, no wording that's talking about breastfeeding being better than breast milk or having things for brain health or all these empty promises. None of that is per the World Health Organization code. Like those things are breaking the code. So clearly the US does not follow the World Health Organization's code on formula or breast milk substitutes. So yeah, you can see all these blue cans, and then up close you can see this can there's no pictures of babies. It's just infant formula. Like it doesn't have any additional wording or anything to make a parent believe that this is going to be better than breast milk. If you even zoom in, you can see it says that breast milk is still the best food to feed your baby. So yeah, so far I've kind of talked about what this organization does, who their high-risk babies are, what the maternal and the infant mortality rates are there. So, I think the organization started in the beginning like, hey, how can we help people not die? How can we help moms and babies not die? And then now, they're really more on the baby side of things, but how can we help babies not die? And how about we help them thrive? And so these midwives are just doing like the most amazing work there. So I'm not sure where I should pivot to because there's so much to say. Let's just maybe show some pictures about the hospital campus or some pictures and some videos. You can just take a moment to kind of a little kind of tour. Now understand that I really wanted to protect the dignity of the people in Malawi. And I didn't want to just have pictures of like poor people in a poor hospital. And, that's just not the image that I want you to have. While the city hospital is very basic, it kind of looks like an old school, like an old brick school from like the 70s. It's one level. There's no HVAC system. There's no like heating and air conditioning, like central air or anything like that. But they're getting the job done. It's just they're poorly resourced, and there's a ton of people coming to this district hospital in Lilongwe, which is the capital. There's just not a lot of when I say not a lot of resources, I mean like someone could be having a postpartum hemorrhage, and then there would be someone in their family that has their blood type that's willing to give them their blood, and maybe the hospital doesn't have blood tubing, and the mom dies because they didn't have the equipment, the blood tubing. And I want you to just pause for a second, because it's not like, oh, all they need to do is get the blood tubing. What I need you to realize is, and I don't understand really why this is, and I'm not like into politics and economics, but to import things to these countries is much more expensive than importing things to the US. So to give you an example, like I went to the store to buy some soy sauce. Anything that has to be manufactured and imported in is so expensive. Soy sauce there costs, I think it was $14 for a small 8-ounce container of soy sauce. If you were making $200 a month and you were trying to make some soy sauce with your dinner or whatever, you probably would think of something else to eat because you're not going to buy a $14 bottle of soy sauce. The same thing with medical equipment. Anything that has to be imported, it's not like, oh, that's a 25 or 50 cent piece of equipment. That might be what it costs us in the US, but that is not what it costs to ship things to these countries. And so the same is true, like if you're in Germany, like gas in Germany is like $8 to $12 a gallon. Gas in Malawi is $14 to $17 a gallon. Like things are extraordinarily more expensive in other countries than they are in the US. I'm sure you probably know better as to why that is. I don't know why, but it is what it is, okay? So people are making a lot less money. And then the things that are like really necessary are so much more expensive. And so I think the Malawian people want to do the best thing, but the chips are kind of stacked against them right now, especially with what's happening with oil prices and all the things in the world. So anyway, you saw a little hospital tour. The video is kind of like wobbly and looking at the ground. So I don't want to be like a voyeuristic person. I want to, like I said, protect people's dignity, but I did want you to see kind of what it looks like. Something else you should know that I did not know is the hospitals in these African countries provide medical care to the patients, but they are not providing like food and water and like changing the linens and giving the baths to the patients. So that is a responsibility of the family. And so what you'll see here in the morning, which I don't know that the video really captured, but in the morning you'll just see like there's just people lined up everywhere and anywhere on the campus of the hospital, and they're just kicking it, like hanging out, waiting for their opportunity to go care for their family member who's in the hospital and provide them a meal. They have a community kitchen, so they'll make a meal if they can, and then they will, help with hygiene with their family member. and then they'll like sleep outside on the campus somewhere on a mat under a tree, and they'll stay there as long as necessary. Also transportation back and forth, because people don't always have cars or bicycles. It's very expensive if you need to take a bus or some sort of transportation. So right now, at the time of year that I went, the weather is really, really good, but clearly it could be really, really hot, and people are just sleeping outside trying to provide food and water for their patient or their family member who is a patient in the hospital. So that was heavy for me to see that. The other thing I learned when I took a tour of the hospital is, because people live so far from the hospital, you will have people who are about, like, they call them antepartum patients, people who are getting close to their due date. They will just come and they'll just like camp out in the hospital lobby or in the antepartum unit. They don't have a bed, but they have like rooms, and it's not like a sleeping bag, but it's kind of like a sleeping mat. And they'll just camp out in the hospital just so that when they do go to labor, they're close and they're in a safe space so they can be cared for, because they don't know when they might have access to transportation again. Someone could be there for 2 days or for 2 weeks, just waiting to go into labor, and then having to, of course, care for their own food and hygiene and sleep on the floor and all of that. So that was something interesting. I promise this podcast episode isn't all bleak. There's some really good things. I'm going to get to it here in a second. So I come in, I land, we have a couple days to get it together, and then we go to start, when I say we, my husband's doing something different. He was working for a different nonprofit, but I go into the hospital, I have a tour, I meet the staff, I have a tour of the hospital, and then I have a tour of the nonprofit. The nonprofit, Joyful Motherhood, is on the campus of the hospital. So you can see this little video, and like you can see their little square. It's a little respite from all the people and all the things happening out in the main hospital. And this is where patients will come, and if they live close enough to the city, they will come and have their visits here in this clinic. And the midwives are here, and they're weighing the babies and providing food and formula and porridge once the baby gets old enough, and education and safety briefings and all of that. So, which is amazing. And I love that this organization was able to get permission from the hospital to build this, set of buildings, and to have their nonprofit serving this community right here. And I love that these midwives are from this community, like they are serving their community, which is amazing. So they were really excited to see me, and I was really excited to see them. I was a little bit nervous because I came to teach a class, except I don't really know what I'm supposed to be teaching, because I don't know what the deficit is. Because what you should know is that Malawi has like almost a 60% exclusive breastfeeding rate. The US has, like, depending what color you are, 25 to 30% exclusive breastfeeding rate. So it's weird for me to come from a country that has a lower breastfeeding rate to try to teach them something. So I was like, let me just figure out where I fit in here, because I don't want to come in with this like superior type, I got it to, we know all the things, when really I feel like they know a lot better than we do. So the midwives, when I met with the ones who work for Joyful Motherhood, they're going to be one of the first 2 IBCLCs in their country. So they're right now in a course, and the goal is for them to become IBCLCs. So they had a lot of questions for me, because they don't have any other IBCLCs to talk to. So it was really wonderful. So one of the questions that I had, which sounds a little ignorant, but I was just curious if women there suffer from engorgement. Is this something I should even spend time teaching on? Or are they so malnourished that they barely are getting any milk in and barely having that problem? So when I first met them and we sat down, they were just busting at the seams with questions for me. And the first question they had was, how do we manage engorgement? And I was like, oh my gosh, really? You guys have engorgement here too? Tell me about it. And all the things. So we just start talking like, chatty catties the whole time. And it was really fun and amazing. Okay, so this is where it gets good, because I'm like, let me learn from you. What are the educational deficits, so that when I do my class in the next couple days, there's going to be 32 people, and they're midwives and nursing professors and community healthcare workers from all of Lilongwe. I don't want to tell them things they already know. And so what I learned was the big problem that they're seeing is a lot of breast abscesses. And when the mom gets a breast abscess, it may not be managed correctly, and then that breast abscess will rupture, and that breast will cease to make milk, and that baby will become malnourished or stunted growth. So see why an abscess can become a really big thing. So I'm like, okay, people don't just wake up with abscesses. Something happens beforehand. And after surveying lots and lots of people in the hospital and the community, what I learned is mothers who leave the hospital are not, well, you should know most people are delivering in a hospital. They're not delivering in their villages anymore. I believe that there are sanctions for midwives who are delivering in villages because they're so far from a hospital. If something goes wrong, those moms and babies usually die. That's what I heard when I was there. So the patients are coming in having their babies in the hospital, but they're not being educated to expect that engorgement is going to happen. So they have engorgement a couple days after they have their baby. They're in pain. They don't want to put the baby to the breast. They don't know anything about hand expression that hasn't been taught. And they just wait. Some of those people, the engorgement will go away and will turn out fine. And some of those people might get mastitis. And then it's very hard for them to get back to the hospital. They don't realize they have mastitis. They're just trying to wait and see if it goes away because it's very expensive for them to get transportation to come back an hour or 2 or 3 to the hospital. So by the time they're ultra sick, they come back to the hospital and then they have an abscess, if that makes sense. The other thing I learned is if they are coming back for mastitis, the medication that they're using for mastitis is not the antibiotic that's generally recommended for mastitis. And so perhaps the mastitis isn't actually getting properly cleared or treated because it's the wrong antibiotic. Okay, so that's the first thing identified. Let me see. The second thing that I identified after talking and doing a survey with the hospital staff is that, so the first thing is hand expression is not being taught and engorgement management is not being taught. And so the other big thing I learned is babies who cannot latch because of prematurity or anything that causes them to be too sleepy or not have enough vigor to latch. There is no other intervention. And so they're not being taught to hand express and cup feed or spoon feed those babies. And so what many times will happen is you have a preterm baby or a twin or a triplet. They're too sleepy and too weak to latch, but they keep putting them to the breast, keep coming for breast, keep putting them to the breast. They don't realize that the baby is mostly sleeping at the breast, not transferring a lot of milk. A couple weeks go by, they come in because the baby looks dehydrated or whatever the problem is, they come into the hospital. By that time, the mother's milk supply has dropped. The baby never had the vigor to remove milk frequently and effectively, and so now we have a problem that the mom's milk supply has dropped. They don't have access to pumps or anything, and we have this little tiny baby now that may not survive. And so those are my two big things to try to impart on these healthcare workers and midwives and professors was A, the importance of hand expression and when that's appropriate, how often that's appropriate, and for how long to do it. And of course, like I said, the reasoning why that's appropriate. So it was a big light bulb to most of the people in there that hand expression is required. Yes, for the first day or two that they're in the hospital if they have a sleepy baby, but probably for the next few weeks. If they're having a 32-weeker, they're probably going to need to hand express and cup feed that baby for quite a few weeks until the baby shows signs of vigor that they can remove milk effectively. And when I surveyed the audience, when I surveyed the actual class members who were nurses and had jobs and whatnot, many of them said, hey, I had a baby at 30 weeks and my milk supply dried up by 8 weeks. Why was that? And then I said, well, after I asked more questions, we realized, oh, you had a sleepy baby at the breast who wasn't removing milk effectively. And so by 2 months postpartum, your milk supply dropped. Of course, and you never hand expressed because you didn't know about that, and you don't have access to a pump, and hence you had to use your whole salary to buy formula. So they were all really really grateful for that education. But the best part is that we had volunteers from the nursery to we had 3 patients on each day. So we had one class on one day, one class on another day. And we had 6 or 7 patients that were just all about help me learn how to hand express and feed my baby. And so these volunteers were so amazing. Please understand there's a big language barrier. So that was one of the things I had to work through. There's a lot of stimuli, a lot of new environments, a lot of smells, a lot of things you're not used to seeing. It's just totally different. And so the language part, even though English is spoken by everyone, very thick accent, some of the English can be limited. And cultural things like breasts are not a taboo thing. Breasts is like a nose on your face. Now, legs, on the other hand, that is scandalous right there. So no showing any legs above the knee. Where am I going with this? Okay, so we had these amazing volunteers, these like patients, and they were coming, they were only 1 or 2 days postpartum, and they're like, I have no milk, and this is my first baby, my second baby, whatever. My baby was born at 28 weeks. My baby was born at 32 weeks. Whatever the reason is for their baby to be in the nursery, they were like, what do I do? I don't know how to feed my baby. The baby keeps falling asleep. I'm not making enough milk. That's generally everyone's story. And so this is a video. I get very excited and I start squealing like a little pig. I get very excited. And so let me just let you watch this video real quick.
Oh my gosh, I'm so proud of you.
Okay, so
And this is the one she said did not make milk.
Clearly I got very excited.
Look what she just did.
Yeah, you can tell that this mom came in. She started saying she has one breast bigger than the other. She said the bigger breast was giving her drops of milk, but the baby wasn't really pulling any milk out. And then the other breast, nothing was coming out. And so you can see there, I taught the midwives and all the people that were there, the healthcare providers, how to hand express. And the best thing I like about this video, if you look at the hand that's actually holding onto the breast, it's another Black woman's hand. So it's people in her community helping their own community. And they had never had any hands-on training on how to do hand expression. Now, I'm going to tell you, it wasn't like we just went in there and started hand expressing people and milk just came out. Like, it took a lot of finessing, but they were able to see when you do it correctly and you have patience, and you do it gently. That was another big thing. I'll get to that in a second. When you do it gently and with patience, it really can pay off. And then the goal. So I basically taught one student. There was I think 6 students in each room. We had 3 rooms, more or less, 5 to 6 people. And that student then taught another student. And so each of them had an opportunity to help hand express. And then at the end, their job was to teach the patient. And then I came back in and then I basically quizzed the patient to make sure that she was fully educated and she actually could hand express herself. And so they did an amazing job, even with the language barrier and accents and cultural things. Like, it was really like an effective class. Like, they actually left with a set of skills. We talked about lots of things. They have a very large, HIV population. So there was a lot of questions. There was a 7-hour class. So there was a lot of things to cover. It wasn't just hand expression, but hand expression is just one of those life-giving hands-on tools that the skills that they were able to come away with. When I talked about gentle just now, it reminded me what I learned from the healthcare workers is that people and their culture have been taught to be really aggressive with the breast and mash and when they actually got up and showed me how rough people are with the breast, and I was like, oh, this might be why y'all are getting abscesses so much too. So I'm like, please spread the gospel about gentle. We talked about lymphatic drainage. We talked about, all the things for managing engorgement. And so it's really, really cool. So that's one part. Let's help prevent the abscess from happening so that the milk doesn't dry up and the baby can grow properly. And then the other part was, hey, these tiny babies that are high risk and don't have the stamina to breastfeed, let's teach hand expression and let's hand express till the wheels fall off this bus or until this baby, is showing you clear signs that it can remove milk on its own. The other thing that you'll see is a lot of babies that are being born with something that they call asphyxia, which I mentioned before. And that is usually a baby who might come out with cerebral palsy. They didn't have enough oxygen somewhere during labor and delivery. Remember, in these countries, they're not using those electronic fetal monitoring. We don't have heart rates and things. They're listening with the little, I don't know the name of the tool, but it's just a different environment. And so some of these babies are coming out and they are, deprived of oxygen. And so I had one of the babies we were working with. She had no suck reflex, no gape reflex, no rooting reflex. And I'm not sure how good swallowing was going to be on this baby. So this baby would not be able to latch. It has nothing to do with a tongue tie or anything like that. It has to do with the fact that there might be brain damage and or neurologic damage. And so in order for this baby to live, this mom has to hand express her milk and feed it to the baby in a cup. And so thank you guys, those of you who donated to help purchase some of the cups that I bought to bring there, those feeding cups. We provided them with about a year's worth of feeding equipment. I also did bring 10 hand pumps with all of the little inserts in different sizes and taught them how to properly size pumps. But we did talk about like those pumps really should be reserved for parents of twins and triplets. And I did go into a lot of detail that these pumps could cause harm. What I will tell you, I feel really proud for Milk Diva to be there stepping up and providing these resources, because University of North Carolina was there previous to me for a couple of months, and they did an amazing job with teaching and educating a lot of the staff on proper breastfeeding techniques and skills. And they brought 10 hand pumps just like I did, and they taught them how to size the flanges and everything correctly. They worked more with some of the labor and delivery people, and I worked more with those who couldn't work with UNC. So like the antepartum, the postpartum, and the nursery people. So it was really fantastic. So yeah, I got excited. I was squealing like a little pig on that video. I don't care, but I was very excited. And what I got from that is like boobs are boobs no matter where you are. Babies are babies no matter where you are. Labor is labor and birth is birth. What I will tell you what was different is when I was asking like, what are the feeding issues you're having? What are lactation issues you're having? I expected it to be like, oh, nipple pain. That is not an issue. I don't know why, but they're just like, yeah, if they have pain, we're just going to teach them how to latch better. Like, that's it. And it was just like, let's keep the party moving. So nipple pain is just not, and I don't know if it's because everyone's having these natural births. They're like, well, nipple pain doesn't hurt half as bad as that unmedicated birth. Like maybe that's part of it, or maybe it is indeed like there's so many people and grandmas and like villages helping you with positioning and getting a good latch that maybe that's why pain is not that big of a deal. But I saw these moms, I'm talking about like right after birth, and their nipples look great. And there wasn't a lot of nipple pain. So yeah, that was a little bit of kind of what I got. I know I'm going to forget to tell you a lot of things. I will tell you I did not see a lot of tongue ties, even though the midwife said that yes, about 10% of the time they are seeing tongue ties, and they're very, very prominent. And the challenge that they're having is the dentist at the hospital will not release the tongue ties until after 6 months of life, because they want to make sure that indeed it is causing a problem. And after the first 6 months, if it's a problem still, then yes, I will cut the tongue tie. At least that's what I heard from the healthcare workers. So what they told me is happening is the grandmas in the village are using sugarcane reeds, and they're cutting the tongue ties because they know the baby cannot wait 6 months. It's not going to be able to eat and it won't survive. So you take that for what you will. But I kind of was like, go ahead, grandma, do your thing. And remember, these people and these babies have not been exposed to antibiotics. So they have like really strong guts and microbiome. And like no one was telling me people were coming in with infected tongues. They were telling me they were coming in with like abscesses. Like the moms were getting abscesses, but the babies, like I'm going to tell you, I saw some really beautiful, healthy, happy babies. Actually, how about I show you this video real quick of this beautiful little girl who was just, she was just so cute. She was just so happy. Here, take a peek. She was one of the babies who was here with our guardian, and we were giving her formula and forage because she was one of the babies who was referred to Joyful Motherhood. And look how healthy and happy she is. So it's not all terrible things. Before I went out and I did field visits, here's a picture of me with a wrap around my waist. This is called a chintenge, and it is a beautiful fabric. All the fabric there is beautiful, but you use it around your waist, and when you go out into the villages, you need to wear, like women need to wear that. I know there's a lot more probably background to it, which I don't know, but you also can use that fabric. Like people do an amazing job of wrapping their babies on their back, and they walk for miles and miles and miles with these babies on their backs. And so, yeah, baby wearing is a huge, like everyone baby wears, everyone feeds on demand, everyone feeds their baby all night long. Like there is no scheduling. We're just feeding these babies as often as they need to eat and loving up on them and having them tied to our hip or our backs. And it's not like you hear a lot of crying babies. Like they're pretty chill babies who snack and nurse and eat all night and mean, people just do what they got to do and keep the party moving and then go walk 10 miles to get some medical support if they need that. So I learned a lot from the healthcare workers and nurses and the professors that were at my class. It was a long day. I did get a stomach virus when I was there, so teaching was hard, but they made it really wonderful and worth it. I just thought the grandmas with the sugarcane thing and the tongue tie thing, like I don't know. I was like, go ahead, grandma. And then they were telling me how forceful and like vigorous they're squishing their breasts. And then they were telling me like how big of an issue breast abscesses were. And then they were just sharing with me like how hand expression and engorgement management is not something that's taught. I was so impressed with how much they knew about breastfeeding in general. Like they already knew you had to feed your baby 8 to 12 times a day. They already knew we should initiate breastfeeding within the first 2 hours after birth. They already knew the importance of skin to skin. Like they already knew so it was just, that's why they have a 60% breastfeeding rate because no one can afford to buy formula. And a lot of people aren't working outside of the home when they have babies. But still, they have a 60% breastfeeding rate and we have like between 25 and 30%. And so there was a lot of things that they are doing right that we could definitely learn from. Babies are not given formula and we give out formula like it's Tic Tacs. Oh, they thought it was crazy that, you know how when you have a baby, like there's formula in the pediatrician's office, there's formula. They like mail you samples of formula. Like that was insane to them. They also thought us having fruit that doesn't have seeds in it was insane. They just thought like that's not natural. Why? Like that sounds like science fiction. Like why would you eat a fruit that doesn't have seeds in it? So there were some really cool things just from that part that I thought were really awesome. And I was like, you guys are doing so much right. I just wish you had more resources so that we can save some more moms and babies. But I'm very grateful to Joyful Motherhood, who's really focusing on saving the babies of the moms who have died already. And so that was, going out into the field and visiting those families was, heart-wrenching, but then it brought a lot of joy because you see how well they are doing. And if it wasn't because of this organization, these babies don't have a chance. So yes, I'm very, very, very grateful that I had this opportunity. I'm also really grateful that I had the opportunity to work with these future IBCLCs. Here's a picture of one of the ladies. Her name is Nita. I wanted her to teach some of the class because I really like for people who look like them to be teaching them. And so she got to teach a part of the class on mastitis engorgement management. I was very surprised. I shouldn't be surprised, but I was saddened to find out how hard it was to find an image of a black breast with mastitis because normal teaching about looking for a pink streak or that's not going to work on black skin. And so we were able to do some education on that front. But one of the things that is very, like a really nice, helpful thing to do for engorgement management is applying ice packs to the breast. That's not an option in Malawi or in South, that's not an option for a lot, for most people in this community. So I really wanted to be culturally sensitive and I wanted to give advice that was actually applicable to their lifestyle and their environment. And so I did spend a lot of time before teaching the class kind of interviewing and learning and asking questions about like what are barriers that they have, what are the issues that they're having, what are some of the things they've tried, what are, all of those things. So it was very nice to be able, healthcare professional to healthcare professional, to discuss these things and brainstorm together in a way that they can make a long-term change. I also love that after the class, we came up with the idea of having a WhatsApp group for all the participants so we can help encourage and remind them all the things that they learned so they can continue to spread the gospel and teach other healthcare providers so we can improve and continue to improve healthcare outcomes and maybe decrease the amount of abscesses that women are getting and increase the amount of breast milk that these high-risk babies are getting so that we can decrease the malnourishment and the stunted growth. Because if we're able to maximize milk supply on these delicate, fragile infants and help their mothers maximize their milk supply, then that baby can thrive and, be nourished and grow much better than the way things have been now. So I'm so grateful. I am going to tell you, I'm going to switch now just to a couple of funny, non medical related things, because on this trip, I was like, when am I going to go to Africa again? I don't know. So let's tack on a couple of fun things. So we went to the safari and it was amazing. It was called Sandile, and it was on the Zambia border, and it was amazing. We got to see lions and leopards and elephants and zebras and buffalo and giraffe and wild dogs and everything. So here's some pictures from there. They're really beautiful pictures. I didn't take these. Someone in my little truck took them. She had an amazing camera. She was from Germany and she shared these pictures with me. And it was a dry season. So it was really, really nice weather, but very dusty. So after on my second morning there, why did I wake up and I was like, my face feels kind of weird. And I was like, honey, is my face swollen? Are my eyes swollen? And he was like, maybe. And then I get up and I go look in the mirror, and here is a picture of my eyes and my face. And I was like, are you blind? My eyes are hella swollen right now. So I don't know what happened, but there was that. So I was like, oh God, why can't I just catch a break? I've been having something happen to me every day since I've been here. So my eyes were swollen. I took all the Benadryl. I took all the things. It took a while. It took like 3 days before the swelling went down. But the itching was like crazy. It was like a good 3 or 4 days. So just insane. Yeah, but it was really a fantastic trip. After that, we went to Zanzibar, which is so cool. It's like a mix of like Arabic and African and I don't know, European influences on this island. Really, really cool. Really, really beautiful. We just had the best time. We have a lot of spices. We brought home some spices. So yeah, it was really wonderful. And then we did like another 28 hours to get home. And so very, very grateful to have that experience. Very grateful to Joyful Motherhood for hosting us. Very grateful for everyone who held things down while I was here. Very grateful that I got to see the other side of the world and how things are done and really how resilient people are. The people of Malawi are so kind and welcoming and generous. It is very beautiful. It's just has a lot of poverty. And the history of these countries, they've been colonialized by European countries until the 60s and the 70s. It's not like they haven't had their countries very long. They haven't had independence very long, but they've had a lot of their natural resources stripped from them. And they're, having to build an economy during a time where it's very difficult. And so my heart does go out to them. But I will tell you, I was very moved with how the community will come around these babies and these families. And I mean, really, to adopt a baby, that's a big deal. And people they're rising to the occasion, and they are doing it because it's happening at such high rates. I mean, for you to lose almost 300 women per 100,000 births, like that mortality rate is very high. And that means that there's so many orphans out there. So this is, my report to you of the African version of Call the Midwife. I hope that you were able to get a little taste of what that was like. I know that it's hard for me to put into words that whole experience, but that was kind of what I can verbalize right now. And I'm happy to answer any other questions if you want to send me a message, but it was wonderful. And if there's any room in your heart or your wallets to even, donate $10 or $15 or $20 a month or at one time to Joyful Motherhood to help these babies and these moms, that would be amazing. And it's just joyful.org. That's kind of it. So you'll get a tax receipt if you do volunteer. So there are many wonderful stories that you can read about on their website of grandmothers or guardians who are taking care of these babies and how they're thriving. And if it wasn't for this organization, these babies would perish. So that is my story. Thank you so much, guys. And I will talk with you later.